It was red and yellow and green and brown and scarlet and black and ochre and peach and ruby and olive and violet and fawn, and I don't remember the rest, and I'm really surprised I remember that much. Good morning, everyone. It is Sunday, August 9th. We don't have the full service online this week because we're actually gathering together. I was just singing the opening, or one of the opening lyrics for the opening of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. Had a chance to almost perform the show many years ago with Ben Agresti at Encore Dinner Theater here in Erie, Pennsylvania. Exciting and wonderful, and also one of the most disappointing moments of my life. Right before the show was supposed to actually go into heavy rehearsals, about 3 weeks before opening, we suddenly heard from the production company that the rights had been pulled because a touring company was coming through the region. As you may or may not know, when the professionals come, any other rights and royalties get pulled by other organizations. And we were just a simple little struggling dinner theater in downtown Erie. And the rights got pulled from us. Cindy Ciotti, may she rest in peace, a lovely lady, was playing the narrator. And she came into the rehearsal that day and she said, "You mean I learned all those colors for nothing?" We were all, of course, sad not to do the show. She was more angry about not actually having a chance to sing the lyrics that she had spent a long time memorizing. There's a lot of colors in that robe of Joseph's, the colors, I'm sure, that really angered all of his brothers, well, or at least most of them. And the ones who maybe were on the fence got kind of dragged along by the rest. It's an interesting story, the end of Genesis, the Joseph cycle, as I learned from Dr. Terry Giles. Lots of things happening in that story, which kind of parallel a lot of things that we may be experiencing today. Sometimes there are those who have and a majority who do not, and sometimes there's a great deal of anger, and there's a great deal of resentment. Sometimes some are given favored status and some are not, and some are given beautiful Technicolor colored robes to wear, and others are not. It's not unusual that we get angry. It's not unusual that we feel the jealousy that somebody else may have something that we don't have ourselves. And jealousy can sometimes complicate things inside of homes, inside of communities, inside of nations, and certainly across the world, as we see as our pandemic of coronavirus continues to pull the veil back on everything else that's happening around us. Another part of the story, which I think is interesting, is the fact that Joseph kind of follows his brothers and says, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" Not realizing, not even aware of the fact that his privileges and his gifts may actually be complicating the relationship and creating some other problems. It's a great story, and there's some great lessons and reminders to be taken from it, even in the Old Testament. How about that? But our gospel today, I think, is the thing that draws me most because of where I am right now in our situation. I am, of course, recording this separate, but on Sunday morning, August 9th, the people of St. Stephen's in Fairview are going to gather together, physically distanced, but certainly socially connected, with their masks on. And on the lawn at the church, on the north side of the church, they gather, kind of like the Who's gathering at the end of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, to still celebrate and to still say that Christmas is here. We're still gathering together. There'll be circles on the lawn that we have to stay in. We're going to ask ourselves not to hug each other, not to touch each other. And at the end of the service, we're going to be quickly moving back to our cars and moving on. But for a moment, for a brief moment, we'll gather together as a church family, as a community, as a congregation. And we'll say prayers and hear stories. And we'll pray for others. And we'll do a spiritual communion, the form that we use from the Order of Julian of Norwich, because we won't be doing a Eucharist, we won't be doing a Holy Communion service, but we'll still be reminding ourselves that God is with us, and God is in us, and God is around us, and God is supporting us, and God is feeding us, and still inspiring us. God is always there, even in moments that we're not quite sure that God is there. In the other part of my life right now, I am getting ready to go back to school. On Monday morning, August 10th, Gannon University will be stepping back into the classroom. Now, the classrooms do not look like they did. They are physically distanced. There's a space between my teaching area and the students' learning area, and they themselves are spaced out. And they are also going to be arriving into the classroom and sitting in set class spaces. They're going to be slowly exiting. We learned that by watching what's happening with our airlines. And we are going to deliver an in-person educational experience. And we're going to manage the occasions where people do get sick, because people will get sick. And we're going to manage them in a healthy way to protect both them and others. On March 17th, we went home, but on March 18th, the president's leadership team gathered together and said, how do we do this? How do we follow everything that we know? Not just what the CDC, the WHO, and the Pennsylvania Department of Health ask us to do, but we have health education and health sciences on our campus. What can we do even more than that? And so we will be back in the classroom. However, I'm always thinking about the small phrase that Abraham Lincoln said, man proposes, God disposes. We are planning, we are hoping. We're stepping out of the boat is what we're doing, just like Peter did. And Peter had probably everything he needed. He had the faith, he had the knowledge, he had the model. He saw how Jesus did it. If Jesus can do it. And he steps out of the boat. For a moment, he's okay. But then he starts to doubt. And he starts to fear. And he loses his concentration. And he starts to look around. And he says, this is water. You can't stand on water. And Peter begins to sink. And because of that, because he forgets what he knows, because he is especially afraid, he begins to lose his identity and lose his strength. In the same way, Jesus reaches out to him and says, you've got this, I've got you, you have little faith, come on, come on, come on. And he helps him back into the boat, because Jesus is there. Now, I'm not saying that all of us need to step out of the boat. Some of us do need to remain in the boat. In my own world, I've got colleagues who want to wrap themselves in cellophane and slather hand sanitizer all over themselves in the morning before they leave the door. And I've got others who would wear scantily nothing and ride in on a white horse wearing no mask and hug and kiss and touch everybody and everything. Somewhere between these areas of carefulness and carelessness, I think, is appropriate caution. And we go into the world with caution. Now, this applies maybe to our pandemic, although I still insist that we do need to keep our masks on. We need to wash our hands. We need to remain physically distanced. We need to stay home unless we can't stay home. All of those things. We need to minimize the number of persons we come into contact with, avoid large crowds. You know how it goes. All of those things. But I also think, though, that in those moments where we have to try something new, where we have to do something different, when the thought of repeating yesterday again today becomes unimaginable, then we step out of the boat. Even if we fall, Christ will be there. So, be in the boat if it's where you're comfortable. But if you are called to step out of the boat, don't be afraid. God is with you. Amen.